It was April Fool's Day when the proposals came out. So some people thought it was an April Fool's gag. But the Chiefs have actually proposed that running backs, tight ends, receivers, linebackers, defensive backs be allowed to wear single digits. And there are plenty of NFL players who wore single digits in college who love the development, retweeted our story with all sorts of great comments, and even Orlando Brown says that the offensive linemen should get dibs on the single-digit numbers. They would be excluded, as would the defensive linemen, but plenty of players. There will be, if this ever happens, can you imagine the effort that they're going to have to engage in to decide who gets what number? Because everybody's going to want the single-digit numbers. You're going to have running backs, receivers, tight ends, defensive backs, and linebackers all clamoring for 9 single-digit numbers. So our draft today, players who would look the best with single-digit numbers now or in the past. Charean, I'll give you the first pick.
There's so many good ones, Mike, and I want to know why the number 2 is so popular, but it is popular. So I'm going to start there with Deion Sanders because number 2 at Florida State is retired, and it's retired for Deion Sanders. He wore, of course, 21 for the 49ers, Cowboys, and the Washington football team. Here's your trivia question since we didn't have it, Mike. What number did he wear for the Ravens, and why didn't he wear 21?
Wow. He wore, what did he wear? Did he wear 24 because Chris McAllister had 21?
You're right about Chris McAllister. He wore 37, but that's the reason he didn't wear 21 was because of Chris McAllister. But he looked great. Thanks, Matt. He looked great in that 2 jersey, and I think he would have looked great in the 2 jersey in the NFL if he'd been allowed to wear it, Mike.
All right, and that's an obvious one. That would have been my first pick. The next pick, Reggie Bush, and the number 5, because this whole debate started in 2006 when the ubiquitous Mike Ornstein was representing Reggie Bush for marketing purposes and was making an aggressive push to get the NFL to change its rules then so that Reggie Bush could continue to wear number 5. The NFL said no, he wore number 25, but bring back Reggie and put him in number 5. He's the guy this rule was made for. They should call it the Reggie Bush rule, even though it's 15 years after the fact.
Yes, indeed.
Right.
I can see him in that number 2 and will look great in the NFL wearing that number.
Next round, you're up.
Number 2 is number 2 again, number 2. I'm going to have all number 2s, I think, today. Charles Woodson, he won the Heisman in number 2, right? Remember the Heisman pose that he made at Michigan, and then he got to the NFL, and he had to play in 24 with the Raiders and 21 with the Packers. He played 18 seasons in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Great player, but I think he would have looked much better in the number 2 in the NFL, Mike.
Yeah, I agree with you there. And again, I don't know what it is about number 2, but I think it's just, there was an article in the New York Times a couple of years ago about how college players want the single-digit numbers and the competitions they have, the things they do to get the single-digit numbers. For whatever reason, players are smitten with that. That's why I think it caught so much fire yesterday, because it's off limits for anyone except quarterbacks and kickers in the NFL. If they do this, there's going to be a lot of guys that want it. I'm going to go Jerome Bettis, number 6 at Notre Dame, 36 in the NFL. But, a guy that big, you almost wouldn't be able to see the number. A little 6 in the middle of this gigantic torso. But to see that guy rumbling down the field in the single-digit number would have just been awesome. And again, a rule that is too late for some of these guys, but Bettis would have been awesome in 6.
And I'm going to stay with the number 2 again, Mike. I'm going to go with Derrick Henry because he wore number 2 at Alabama, and he wore number 2 during his rookie camp, if you remember, and the preseason. And then, of course, the NFL made him change into a different number, and now he has 22. And he says that's a tribute to a former Alabama running back who was killed in a car crash. They were very, very close, had met at the Nike camp, and that's the reason he wears that number 22 now. So I will be curious if he's allowed to change number if he changes to 2. But think of all the jersey sales, Mike. If a guy like Derrick Henry changes from 22 to 2, how much jersey sales they're going to have just for these guys changing numbers.
And I'm glad you made that point. I almost wrote about this last night, and maybe I will now, because I remember there was a time when players would propose changing their numbers. The league actually said, you've got to pay wholesale cost of all the jerseys that have already been made with your prior number. And you have to do that before we let you change your number. And plenty of guys said, I'm sticking with the number that I have. Thank you very much. I'm not writing that check. For something like this, I think the folks at Nike say, just give those other jerseys away for free. We're going to sell a hell of a lot more if you've got single-digit numbers for these star players. So I think that it would not be an issue this time around. I'm going to go less obvious than the ones we've done so far, but for the folks who followed the Minnesota Vikings, specifically in the mid-'80s and into the early '90s, Anthony Carter, put him in number 1 like he wore at Michigan. And the thing about Anthony Carter, he had the strangest build of any football player I can remember. He was just all arms and legs, but he was only 5'10". And he had this short torso where I can remember games where the bottom of his number, the 8 and the 1, were actually tucked into his pants. That's how this frame was so different, but he should have been in number 1. All of mine are historical guys, but yeah, and you know that there will be receivers out there. What kind of deals are going to be done on teams where there's already a kicker or a quarterback who wears number 1? It's going to open a new universe of negotiations between players for numbers that may already be claimed that they would like to get their hands on if it happens. I don't think it's going to happen. I think this is one of those that is too outside the box. Maybe it'll happen a few years from now, but I'd be shocked if there's 23 teams that will say, let's do it, unless they see how much money they can make off of jersey sales, and maybe that's the impetus for it.
That's what it'll have to take, Mike, is the money they'll make. It always comes down to money. I think we're going to do round 4, so I'm going to go away from
I don't have
number
any more.
2. This kind of takes me away. You don't have any more? Well, I'm going to go with DeAndre Hopkins
because
he was number 6 at Clemson. So I'm going to go with DeAndre Hopkins. I think he would look great in that number 6 again. Now, he's given multiple reasons why he now wears the number 10. He initially said he wore it as a tribute to soccer great Lionel Messi, and then he came back and said he did it because a cousin of his served 10 years in prison, and he didn't think it was right that he got 10 years for $600 of drugs. So whatever reason he wears 10, I think he would be willing to switch back to that number 6 he wore in college.
I'll go Jadeveon Clowney, put him in number 7, because really the biggest moment of his football career came in that jersey when he popped the guy's helmet off, rock'em sock'em robot style, and eventually it feels like he's destined to play for 7 different teams. So it works on multiple levels.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.